It's April 16th, 2026. I'll be speaking to Phil Brewer, a retired emergency room physician at Yale New Haven Hospital. He's a longtime member of Jewish Voice for Peace and Healthcare Workers for Palestine and Doctors Against Genocide. He was in Washington, D.C. at an event organized by Doctors Against Genocide. Good morning.
Good morning, Stan.
So, what was the action called?
So this was a day of a combined day of a public demonstration against the genocide in Gaza, as well as the other genocides that are going on, and then followed by visits to legislative offices, both Senate and House, on Capitol Hill. This is something that Doctors Against Genocide, which we always call DAG, so I'll just say DAG. This is something that they've been doing since the beginning of the genocide, really. The first one was in, I think, November of 23, and there were only four of them, and they didn't really know what to do, but they quickly organized. And now every single month, there are about 30 or 30, sometimes 40 members who convene in Washington and have arranged appointments with senator and representative staffs. Occasionally, we actually talk to the representatives. That's about a third of the time. Generally never the senators. And but we have ongoing relationships with their legislative aides, and they generally have somebody who has a combined position of defense and international relations. That is their portfolio. Um, and
Tell
so
us
we,
about the demonstration first, if you would.
yeah.
How big was that? Oh,
So
okay.
this month is International Genocide Awareness and Prevention Month, and that's because the 14th was the anniversary of the beginning of the Armenian genocide at the hands of the Turks, um, and it has since become spread out or diffused to all of the genocides. So we decided that this month we would have a public display, and it's because during a previous meeting with Jamie Raskin, when we presented our demands or our asks, he said, "Well, bring me 1,000 white coats to Washington, and then I can do something." And so that started the 1,000 White Coats in Washington Day, which was the official title of the event.
I see.
Um, as it turned out, we had about 500 people, which is pretty good, and, uh, and a big showing. So we convened at 9 o'clock in Union Station, where we organized the day, did a group picture, did a few chants until the security people came over and said we couldn't demonstrate inside there. And then we marched with our banners, including the banner which, two banners which you gave to me, calling for the liberation of Dr. Abu Safia.
Yeah,
We marched over to a grassy area in front of the Capitol building, and had our rally. And at the rally, we had, I believe, seven speakers, including Dr. Nidal Jabour and Dr. Karama Cummerly. They are the two co-founders of Doctors Against Genocide. They're both Palestinian American physicians. And they were followed by three different, two physicians and a nurse who, within the past 2 months, had been to Gaza on volunteer missions. And they gave their testimony basically realistically to what they saw and what's going on. We also had Rashida Tlaib, the representative, who is one of the most supportive of Palestinian rights and of the movement to try to end the the genocide. Um, and then after that, we went to the Hill to our respective. We broke up into teams, and the teams went to their assigned appointments, and we presented our what we call leave behinds, basically handouts with general information about the group, but also the long list of specific things that we feel need to be legislatively attended to. And of course, that afternoon was the fourth in a series of Senate resolutions presented by Bernie Sanders to block further sales of some specific items, some specific weapons, including the 1,000-pound M108 bombs, the armored Caterpillar bulldozers that are actually weapons of war and of occupation. And on the first time around, there were 15 senators, all Democrats, who voted in favor of it. And the second time, I believe it was 27. And this time, there were 40 senators who voted in favor. It didn't pass, but each time, more and more Democratic senators have
Mhm.
changed their vote and decided that indeed we need to quit shipping arms to Israel.
I
And
would
there's a
think
strong,
that
go ahead.
I would say in part, I think it's because they're reading the polls. There was a piece on CNN. I mean, it was staggering. The loss of support for Israel. First, they talked about young people, then then all adult Americans, and so on. And from what had
Yeah.
been mild positives became huge negatives. And so politicians are aware of that, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that had a lot to do with their changing opinions.
Well, even J Street is reading the polls because J Street for the J Street, and for perhaps the listeners who aren't familiar with it, it's what is often referred to as a liberal Zionist organization.
Yeah,
They don't like the occupation, but they're not against Zionism. They don't see that as the root cause of what's going on. And so they've always been in favor of these arms transfers. But for the first time, they came down on our side. So even they're reading the polls. And clearly, public opinion has changed dramatically. But our governments, and that's not just in the United States, our governments have not caught up to the public opinion. And part
yeah,
of that, a big part of that is the fact that they don't actually represent us. They represent their backers, and they don't consider the public to be their backers. The public is just the people that have to be fooled into voting for them so they can continue to defend the interests of their backers. But 40, I think there's hope, particularly if the Democrats get control of the Senate in the midterms. Uh, there is actually a possibility of the next one of these passing and obeying the law. It's against the law. There's a thing called the Leahy Amendment that's been a law for over 20 years now that says it is illegal for the United States to ship arms, to ship war material to countries who are committing gross violations of human rights.
right.
Nobody, well, there are some people who can deny that Israel is doing that, but we know that they're not in touch with reality or they're lying or whatever. But we know that Israel is committing genocide, which is the greatest violation of human rights. And so it's illegal for us to be shipping these arms. And in addition to illegal under American law, It's illegal under international law. Every legislator who votes in favor of those arms shipments, every legislator who yesterday voted against this resolution is committing, by that act, is committing genocide by complicity.
Mm.
They're never going to get arrested or indicted or go to trial. But you know, even when a murderer doesn't get caught, they're still a murderer. And when somebody supports genocide, they're guilty of genocide, whether they ever get whether they ever have to pay for it in a court of law. And this is one of the points that I in particular emphasize in the meetings that we have. Um,
And we
there's a
should say
handout.
we're recording this here in Connecticut. One of the seven who would not vote to end the arms shipments to Israel was Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal.
Yes, yeah.
Did people
Um,
go to his office? Did people try?
uh, we did. We That was our last call. We didn't have an appointment, but we I've been on at least three appointments with his legislative aides in his office, and it's very interesting because the first one, the person that they assigned to see us was clearly antagonistic and was wearing um, two lapel pins. On one side, he had a yellow ribbon, free the Israeli hostages lapel pin. And on the other side, he had a crossed US flag and Israeli flag.
Wow.
And afterwards, I sent a note to Senator Blumenthal, who I've known for a long time. I'm not, wouldn't say I'm friends with him, but he knows who I am because we've worked on issues way back when he was Attorney General. And I sent him a note and I said, you know, when I go to see my US Senator, I don't expect to be greeted by somebody who's wearing the flag of a foreign country on his lapel without even saying Israel. I didn't hear back from him about that. But that was the first meeting. Um, but the second, third, and fourth meetings, there were a combination of three aides at those meetings, um, one of whom is former U.S. Navy intelligence officer, um, and she was actually she gave the frankest answers to questions of anybody we've ever seen. Because the problem with seeing the staffers is when you ask them a question, almost invariably the answer is, well, I can't speak for the senator or I can't speak for the representative.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so you don't get an answer. And so our response to that always is, well, would you please pass that on to them, and in follow up, we will hope to get an answer, a direct answer to the question. Because the other thing that happens is they'll send you back a reply with referring to the question that you asked, and then there will be a 2 or 3 paragraph boilerplate
Right.
response that says nothing. Um, so yeah, that's what's happened with Blumenthal. He is a devoted Zionist, and I can't really see any reason why he would change course.
How
Um,
about, so you say about 500 were at the demonstration, and I'm sure
yeah,
hundreds went into lobbying. Did you all get together afterwards to kind of compare
advocacy,
notes?
advocacy. We we're all careful about using the lobby word because that
Okay.
has tax implications.
All right. The
So
advocacy.
yes, we call it advocacy, which is what it is. Um, we're certainly
So,
not paid to do this.
did you get together afterwards, compare notes, and were there any
Yeah.
surprises or good news?
The surprise was that we had a large turnout that thanks to some really intense work by about 5 people who were organizing and who developed an app that we could all look on our phones, because the meeting schedule changed up to the last minute as we got new representatives or senators accepting meetings and so forth. Um, and so we were very pleased about the organization, about the rally slash press conference. Um, as sort of expected, we really reached out to lots of media outlets, to get them to cover this. And in the end, there were only 4. There were no major American ones. TRT, which is the Turkish uh, uh, channel, and actually their reporting is quite good. They were there. Al Jazeera covered it. Um, the International Photographers Association sent
Hmm.
somebody to cover it. Um, and so there will be some. We also were hoping that Democracy Now would cover it, but they didn't. And I sort of explained to people, here in Washington, there are groups like ours, not the same cause, but you know, volunteer groups who have a cause, who do this all the time. And so, from their standpoint, what we're doing today is not really news. So I kind of get that. But by having it on TRT and Al Jazeera, one of the very important things is that people back in Gaza and the West Bank and in East Jerusalem will see the coverage of this on Al Jazeera, on TRT. And we had quite a few people tell us that they are very encouraged when they see, um, for instance, the events at the Palestine Museum, to the extent that that gets back to Palestine. It gives people hope, and it lets them know that they're not forgotten, and that's one of the big purposes of doing this.
Now, I understand that one of the speakers at the rally was from the National Nurses United. I would think that's big news, an important
That
labor
is
union.
Yes, that's a very important labor union. I have to say that that's my favorite labor union. They're very dynamic. Just as an example, so I'm on the Health Advisory Council steering committee for Jewish Voice for Peace. And about 3 or 4 months ago, we decided that we need to devote some of our time to looking at Palantir and its role both in our domestic politics as well as in Gaza. And if you are familiar with the terms lavender and foundry and where's daddy, you know that Palantir plays a direct role in the murder of Palestinians in Gaza. Um, so we've started studying this, and so I started doing my own homework, looking up what had already been done. National Nurses United started looking at this back in 2020. So they're
Nice.
way ahead of everybody on
Hmm.
that. And so after she spoke, I went up and gave her my card and told her basically what I just told you, and said, I hope we can um, develop a mutual relationship or a teacher student relationship, because they're way ahead of us. But they can actually help us get up to speed.
Sounds like a
Uh,
great event. I appreciate you talking to me.
yeah, well, thank you. We had a good Connecticut delegation, um, and there were at least 9 people from Connecticut who went. And so they assigned us all but one to the same group, of which I was the group leader. Um, and that um, that gave us a sense of camaraderie and, something we'll refer to back home in Connecticut. Um, so yeah, it was good. Got to keep going. Just have to keep going. Just like you're doing, Stan. Just like Faisal's
Okay.
doing. And
Thank you very much for
and
the interview.
and thank you so much for those posters, those banners.
Right.
They were very appreciated. And just to explain to the audience, you made some 6x3 banners calling for the liberation of Dr. Abu Safia, who's now been in torturous starvation custody in Israeli prisons for over a year now. It's been since December, was it 27th of not
Yes.
this last year, but the year before. And so we brought his name up quite a bit too, just to remind our representatives this isn't right, and they should be writing letters to the State Department.
Yeah, I
To
don't know
get the
if you
State
know this,
Department.
but as we speak, at 11 o'clock out in Chicago, there's a press conference in front of the American Medical Association convention. And it's all about Dr. Abu Safia and their failure to say a word about this poor doctor.
Yeah, yeah. I am aware of that because DAG, Doctors Against Genocide, was part of organizing that.
Ah, great.
And so they said, if you're not in Washington, you have to be in Chicago. Um, so yeah, absolutely. It is absolutely shameful that there is no American professional organization of any kind, including medical, that has come out in condemnation of the genocide. And it's especially shameful that none of the medical associations have come out. In when Russia invaded Ukraine, it took the American Academy of Pediatrics only 10 days to pass a resolution condemning their actions. 10 days. Well,
Yeah.
it's been 133 weeks now that the people of Gaza have been under genocide, and no association of any kind has complained about it. If anything, they've suppressed complaints by their members. I don't know if you know about what happened at the American Public Health Association.
No.
The woman who was the chair of the uh, public health committee that that had to do with international relations with other public health associations at not this year's meeting, but the year before. She organized a demonstration in the meeting hall. At these big meetings, there's always a hall where there's stands set up with people advertising and showing what they can offer and so forth. And so she led a group of people through there, um, calling out for an end to the genocide.
Mhm.
And the theme was, you have blood on your hands. If you don't, if you're complicit by your silence, you have blood on your hands. And so they all had blood, fake blood, but on their hands as they marched through. Well, she was stripped of her chairmanship, and she was kicked out of the American Public Health Association. She was expelled. She was excommunicated
Mhm.
for for protesting a genocide. And uh and, and so that's one of the themes that we are that's actually very, very important to us, And this is why we do our weekly vigil at Yale New Haven Hospital. Um, all 38 hospitals in Gaza are demolished. And there are only 4 that are operational to some extent, and it's to a very low extent. Um, and and yet everybody goes to work, all 3,000 employees, however many there are at Yale New Haven, go to work every day, and there are no burned out wards or broken windows, um, or F-35s dropping bombs in the neighborhood. And they have nothing to say about what's happening to their colleagues, our colleagues in Gaza. And so our goal is at least to be able to say, nobody can say they didn't know, because everybody has seen us. We pass out our literature. And that's, you do what you can do. It's all you can do.
Thank
So
you again.
anyway, yeah, you're welcome. And thank you for having me.